we have some big Azur Promilia, Arknights Endfield, and Project Mugen information to discuss. These were streamed on separate days. If you're interested in remaining up to date with stuff like this, then I urge you to come on over and watch me on Twitch, where I stream every single week, several times per week, reacting to a ton of stuff and playing new games. These 3 separate instances are going to be cut together. I will have timestamps down in the description below if you're interested in navigating to whichever game you're interested in. But we have a ton to talk about, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. Shlinrin Azur Promilia. Oh, this person on Reddit created a thread explaining when Azur Promilia is releasing. The release date expectation being 2025. When in 2025, we're gonna get into that. So his first point here, Chinese game approval policy. Games developed in China, called domestic, or in other countries called foreign or imported, must have a game version number, which works similarly to the number you see on the back of a book, which is the ISBN. Here's an image showcasing what he means. This is the ISBN. This identifies the country or language of the group, the publisher identifier, the ID this ID is the title, edition, and format, and this is the check digit. The policy is lengthy and strict. The developer must submit at least a 10-minute automatic demo, which looks like the first trailer PV, which makes sense because if you guys recall, the trailer that we got for the game was about 15 minutes long. And if you think about it, the gameplay demo, the gameplay trailer for Neverness to Everness was also like 13 minutes long. So it makes sense that these automatic demos are created with the intention of releasing globally because they need to showcase this to the Chinese government ahead of time. Makes complete sense. Here is an example of the demo submission. The developer must submit all scripts, dialogue, text, storyboard, etc. The developer must then submit all related packs, the map, copyright, payment functions, menu functions, missing content, character personalities, version names, subtitles. Dude, they are crazy in China, aren't they? Holy crap, that is absolutely psychotic. However, there is a small additional notice at the very end. The applicant fails to operate domestically within 1 year from the date of approval. The applicant shall report to the Ministry of Culture for record and explain the reasons. If it decides to terminate the import, the Ministry of Culture will revoke its import approval number. Azur Promilia approval date. When last we heard, the approval date for Azur Promilia was October 2024. So people were speculating at the time the game was gonna release by October 2024. Azur Promilia approval date. The latest information remains the same. The modified approval date for Azur Promilia has changed. They have modified the approval date from October 2024 to the 25th of January 2024. We have a definitive date that Azur Promilia needs to be released by. The 25th of January. I'm assuming he means 25th of January 2025 here. So yeah, what does that mean? It means that the game must be released as late as the 25th of January 2025, which is a pretty date in my opinion. So the 25th of January 2025, the game needs to be released by. It cannot release January 26, 2025. It cannot release February, March, or April in 2025, which means this is essentially, again, this is carrying on from the speculation that players had that the game was releasing in October 2024. So this is, while not a definitive conclusion, not a definitive announcement from Manju themselves, as close as we're gonna get to one for now. How Manju can cheat the release date. If you notice, I wrote the modified approval date. That's what Manju exploited. Oversimplified, the Chinese government will recheck if the content of the game changes significantly, so the game enters another approval process. Then a new approval date is assigned. So basically what they can do is they can make alterations to the game if they're not ready, and then they can have the release date kind of pushed back. Let's take a look at the newest data. Okay, so here's where I'm assuming it begins to get juicy. Azur Promilia approval information. The first column here is the index number. The second column is the game name, in this case Azur Promilia. Third column is the platform, in this case mobile and PC, although they did also confirm this is releasing on the PS5. The fourth column is the review department, in this case Shanghai Scientific and Technical Literature Publishing House. The fifth and sixth column are changes. In this case, modify the game name from Blue Twin Star Journey Ballad to Azur Promilia. The seventh column is the approval number, which is 2023, 1787. As you can see, the original approval year is 2023. So Azur Promilia was actually slated to release in 2023. Oh, wait, oh my God. So Azur Promilia was theoretically gonna release before Wuthering Waves and Zenless Zone Zero. That is crazy. I wonder what happened that pushed the release back. Is it just that the game wasn't ready? Is it that they, like, what alterations needed to be made or introduced into the game that pushed it back potentially 2 years? I wonder what would have happened to Wuthering Waves and Zenless if Promilia released in 2023. How much success would it have garnered? Would WUA have done worse? Would Honkai Star Rail not have done as good? Genuine questions. That's crazy. The eighth column is the new approval time, called Approval Modified Date, which is January 25th, 2024. Conclusion. Manju can release the game on the 25th of January 2025, or they can change some stuff and request more like being demanded a new approval, because we do have to go through a beta test phase, and if people aren't happy with the test, they can make alterations to the game and then have it pushed back a few more months. Okay, looking at the current pace, Azur Promilia shouldn't enter the first closed beta in August, which pushes the earliest date to mid-September. The first beta test should be pretty narrowed and last around 2 weeks. The Echo test, the second closed beta, should open as early as November, which lasts around 3 to 4 weeks. The third beta test should run as early as the beginning of January 2025 and last only 2 weeks. The third week will be the 1.0 patch PV hype. Then the game will be released globally on the 25th of January. That is the earliest possible schedule. Manju can pull together or can pull another approval request to push the release date further. However, the latest date should be mid-2026. That's crazy. I don't think, I'm going to be honest, I don't think Azur Promilia will do as good if it releases in mid-2026. The reason being, I think every new open world game that comes out is slowly going to eat away at players' patience. I think it is slowly going to begin to fatigue players, because you know how popular Marvel was with like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and how each Avengers movie did progressively better. The cinematic universe grew and grew, and then people just became overwhelmed. They became bored, and there was like superhero fatigue. I think that's happening right now as well. I think after Wuthering Waves, people have begun to realize that they're not necessarily as interested in exploring another open world. They explored an open world in Genshin, they explored an open world in Wuthering Waves, they explored an open world in Tower of Fantasy. Do they want to explore another open world in Project Mugen? Do they want to explore another open world in Arknights Endfield? Do they want to explore another open world in Azur Promilia? Do they want to explore another open world in Neverness to Everness? Do they want to explore, like, there's only so much time we have as gamers and so many massive open worlds we're willing to explore. So if they release back, like all the way back in 2026, they're going to release after Neverness to Everness, they're going to release after Project Mugen, they're probably going to release after Arknights Endfield, and it's going to do significantly worse than it would do if it released, you know, January 2025, which is their projected release date right now. Before we talk about anything else, I want to take a moment to thank my incredible patrons over on Patreon and my YouTube channel members who allow for me to continue to do dedicated videos like this every single day. You guys are phenomenal, and I can't thank you all enough for the support. Now let's keep going. There was a leak over on Twitter from the Arknights Chinese info dump, 31,000 followers. In an article about a game engine expert who had previously worked as a senior lead engineer for Ubisoft joining Hypergriff, the author was informed by someone who has connections with Hypergriff that Hypergriff has plans to release Arknights Endfield in mid-2025. That is about a year from now, potentially sooner than a year from now. That is great news. It's going to join the likes of Azur Promilia, potentially Mugen, Neverness to Everness. 2025 is probably going to be, like, 2024 was a big year. Zenless Zone Zero, Solo Leveling Arise, Wuthering Waves. 2025 is going to be an even bigger year than 2024. Now let's go check out the article specifically. This is in Chinese. It's translated into English. Hypergriff's product line is too single. The company's revenue is completely supported by Arknights. That is true. From 2019 to 2023. Of course, despite only one product, Hypergriff has been the ACG company with the highest annual revenue in China, except for MiHoYo in the past few years. That's also understandable. Arknights is a monolith in China. However, this pattern will be broken this year. The launch of games like Love and Deep Space in China, which has earned like 30 million plus every month, and it's a complete Husbando collection game by Paper Games, and the Naruto game by Kudo will allow them to further gain a number of core users while also increasing the company's revenue and brand influence. The buyout game from Stardust, launched by Hypergriff in February this year, did not receive a good response. I remember that game. I was interested in playing it, but then I didn't. I don't remember why. I think because you had to buy it, which also had a certain negative impact on Hypergriff's reputation. Most importantly, From Stardust exposed the shortcomings of Hypergriff's accumulation of 3D technology, which also made the market and players worry about the future of Arknights Endfield. This is actually taken from X Asterisk, which is the game that they were talking about here. From Stardust was actually called X Asterisk in English. I thought the character models in that game looked great though. Someone close to Hypergriff Network told the author that Hypergriff has plans to launch Arknights Endfield around mid-2025, but there is indeed some pressure on the project progress. That is not good to hear. There is pressure when it comes to pushing the game out. They are under pressure to launch the game before the game is ready. That is not information we want to hear. Tower of Fantasy was pushed out before it was ready. Look what happened to that. They need to make sure they take their time with the release of Enfield. Make sure it is polished before releasing it, otherwise it will fail. We do not need more potential successful games to suffer from being rushed to release. Judging from the performance of the previous technical test of Arknights Endfield, the game has achieved a good degree of completion, mainly in terms of character expressions, character movements, fabric materials, etc. There is still room for further improvement. That is true, but that is why we have beta tests, of which they've only had, I think, one up until this point. I think in terms of character expressions, though, there's going to be a lot of room for competition here. Zenless and Wuwa both have insane expressive characters and character movements. Okay, I know you can't actually see a lot of what's being said here because of my big ass face, so I'm just gonna read it out to you guys, okay? Hey investigators, we're looking to recruit participants who can communicate in English, not in Chinese, in English, for a text interview to gather expectations from other players, to gather opinions on the game. The entire communication will be done through text chat and will take approximately 1 hour. We'll allow more players the opportunity to participate in this. We'll open a registration form. Interested players can fill this out, and we will confirm the interview time with you via private message. If there are too many applicants, it may take time for us to get back to you. We apologize for any inconvenience and appreciate your understanding and cooperation. Now, recently I did a video titled What Happened to Project Mugen, where I went over what happened to Project Mugen and how they went completely silent after announcing that they were releasing, that they had a functional game that they were working towards releasing. It's been, what, 6 months, a year since they first confirmed their game was an actual game, and the silence has caused a lot of people to feel like the game isn't even real anymore. But as of the last 48 hours, it's the 18th when this was posted at 11:44 p.m. in the evening, they are going to be doing English interview where they will go over what player expectations are, what players' general opinions on the game are. This is going to take an hour. There's going to be, in theory, a lot more information revealed about the game. There is, or probably won't be, anything pertaining to gameplay. Unfortunately, I don't see anything listed in this Discord message about future trailers, future footage, but that's okay. We saw what they had to offer, and honestly, it was very good. Now, what's more important than a new trailer is actual concrete information. Things like beta test dates, how close we are to getting a beta test, potential release windows, if there have been any drastic alterations that have been made to the game. If the only reason they're doing this is as a direct response to Neverness to Everness, because that's what it feels like, right? You guys all agree with this? They've been silent for the entirety of the year. Neverness to Everness announces their release, or announces that they're in fact creating what Project Mugen was supposedly creating, and literally within like 48 hours, Project Mugen are already considering addressing all of the issues that players had with the silence, and where they've been, what they've been doing in a big, very long interview. This is not a coincidence, right? Like, I'm not the only one that thinks it's not a coincidence, right? Don't want Mugen to be rushed due to Neverness to Everness? Exactly. Neverness to Everness is probably going to release at some point in 2025, which means if Mugen wants to release their game first, to be the first to do what they are promising to do, having an enormous urban world, having, you know, a fully functional driving system, car system, they need to release before Neverness to Everness. And unfortunately, that might not be the case unless they rush what they've been working on, which is never a good idea.